Doing film. Doing film. Just wait.
I better not.
Wait. Yes, you are. You better turn around.
Should we make the first cut?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Paul, you've been
Cut your thumb while you're doing it.
Listen for the rattle first.
Watch the rattle. Watch the rattle.
Yeah, watch the rattle.
Right down the middle of the pulse. Now, clean, I licked it off.
For you, it's devil's food.
Oh, devil's food, all right.
How about you two guys take the piece first?
All right, okay. Cut ahead. Cut your, we'll just cut a little piece out.
What we'll do is just sort of have them come up. It's going to be a cutting we're going to do angel food, but then he told me it was for you.
It's only a friendly thing.
Okay. All right.
If I'd done anything but devil's food, you'd have been in trouble.
It's one of those bittersweet moments in life. It's sweet because we know that God has really provided you with a lovely home. You're going to be close to us. We're going to have the opportunity to work together. Chris is still going to stay on in the bookstore. I imagine Paul will be here once or twice next week or month. And so it's nice to know that you're not going to be far away. It's bitter, though, in the sense that as I walk by that office over there, I sort of always look in to see the glint off that bulb. It isn't there anymore. And
Got a hairy kid in there now.
the other thing I miss is that little chirper he used to carry around. You know, as you walk down the hall, you'd hear that little noise in all kinds of spots.
Robbie's taking over.
Who's
Robbie's
going to take over with the chirper?
Give me a couple years.
Anyway, tonight is part of our farewell, and really our special way of saying thank you for 20 years of wonderful service to Keswick, 20 years of obedient service to the Lord. We have arranged for a few items. And we trust that you'll enjoy these. And I don't know in what order we have to start, but I've always been told that ladies go before gentlemen.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, wonderful.
And Ruth Ross, would you come? I know you have some special things you want to share.
Anything's going to happen. How do I get through? Oh, I've been asked to do this, and I have to wear glasses even to have
All
this
right.
note.
Well, as you get older, you have to
You know,
do that.
right. I just thought none of the rest of you, just Bill and Ruth Fugit and myself have known Paul for the 20 years that he's been here. But I've had the joy of working in the office with him, having him as my next door neighbor, and so I wanted this privilege to tell you just what life was like with Paul. First of all, before they came here to work, Paul and Chris came down to look at house plans for their house. Bill was sick, and so we were sitting in the dining room, and there we are looking at the plans with our heads close together, and Paul is grinding his teeth. Now, I was very patient. I didn't know Paul, and I tried to be very sweet and thought, he's just nervous. You know, after all, he's sitting there with me, and it's got to be that's why it is. But it continued. He came here, and we worked in the same office, if you can believe that. Our desks were close together, and Paul would sit there and grind his teeth hour after hour until my patience was gone. And I went to him one day and I said, Paul, I've had it. I had talked to Chris. Chris, can you do something? Chris said, he's always done this. His mother did it. That was no help. So I went to him quietly at his desk and I said, Paul, I've had it. One of us has got to change, and I can't do it, so you've got to change. The next time you grind your teeth, I'm going to scream.
Show me how you scream.
He looked at me. He said, no, isn't she cute? A couple days later, we're standing there. I'm at his desk, and he's grinding his teeth. I let out a scream that they could hear everywhere. He got white. He jumped up from his desk. He ran out the hallway, stuck up his hands. He said, I didn't do anything to her. It only took a couple more screams, and if you've noticed, you've never heard Paul grinding his teeth.
Ruthie, you got to show them how the scream was. Go ahead. One scream. Go ahead. brought this on.
It was right under here.
Okay, well, right.
Big bright teeth, yeah.
Wild party.
Then I would work late sometimes, and Paul was living up here, and he decided that poor Ruth couldn't walk home. She'd already walked home 20 years by herself, in the dark, but I could not walk home by myself. But he wouldn't go in the car with me. And so he'd get poor Chris to go and get her clothes on. She'd be in bed or ready for bed, and he'd make her get her clothes on, get in the car, just drive me right down there and back until I told him, Paul, this has got to end. I trust me. What's the matter with you?
I was afraid I just wouldn't be able to resist myself. Control myself.
Resist. You can't resist.
I wouldn't be able to control myself.
Then whenever we had a problem with a cat or with a dog, all we had to do was call Paul, and Paul came and took care of our cats and our dogs. He held them down, gave them medicine, took out their splinters and all that sort of stuff, and really took care of us. Until one day, Bill's father had died in the afternoon, and the next morning I'd gotten up very early in the morning and discovered there was a flying squirrel in our house. And I tried to catch it and I couldn't. Paul tried, he couldn't catch it. So finally we left it in the house, and I believe his advice was, leave your back door open during the nighttime and the squirrel will go out. So before I went to bed that night, late at night, I went to the porch, and it wasn't glassed in at that time. And I went to the porch where the door was slightly opened, and I turned on the light and looked out, and there's a raccoon just about to come in.
I didn't say anything about raccoons. I said squirrel.
The squirrel stayed in. The door was also closed. The next day, finally, I located where the squirrel was, and it was in our study, behind the books, where we had the shelf was quite large at that point. And there was the squirrel behind it. So I called Paul. Paul, quick, the squirrel's there. I know where it is now. So he comes. He comes with a shotgun. He goes in this study, and he wants to shoot in the study that squirrel.
I got a few holes in my books.
Had a little argument. We pushed the books back, and he pushed them back, and the squirrel went flying over us and out the back door.
Got him out. One look at the shotgun and he was gone.
And I think this was a few years later. One morning I'm deciding, should I sleep a little bit later or not, when all of a sudden a cannon went off in the backyard. I don't know if Paul got a new gun or just learned how to use it. But I'll tell you, if any of you lived around that area, when he shot things with that cannon, everything, he just woke up everybody.
10:30 in the morning.
And Nick, if you've seen some holes in the side of your walls there, he used to shoot at the birds that were pecking on the side. I think Victory Hall has a few of his marks too, where he shot Victory Hall. Animals too. He was real good at that.
Do I have to stay?
But one night we were leaving his house, and there was a wild dog out there, and he got his gun and he shot the dog right between the legs.
Get him already hurt, Paul. I'm clubbing to death with the gun. He knows how to hurt anybody.
And there was always the fun with the mice. Yeah, all of you had that fun. We had a cat who caught mice but didn't kill them. And Paul used to get so angry with me because I would not put that mouse in a bag for him. So finally I put a pot over it, but the cat would knock that off, and he'd come down. I don't know, I think President Reagan could have been here. All I had to do was call on the phone and say, Paul, I've got a mouse, and Paul was there instantly. But I learned to put a brick or something over the pot and keep that mouse for him so that he could see it. Now, one of the other joys in the office would be everything would be quiet, and you'd hear some rustling. And I'd look. Paul, did you bring a snake in? Yeah. Paul had found a snake, and there it was in the office with us. That was fun.
Only in the summertime.
Only in the summer.
I think there were a few other times too.
Snake in the grass. Snake.
And then, you know, everybody has to hit a tree at Keswick. You haven't made it until you hit the tree. I was standing near the tennis courts one day, and Paul came along in the van, and he's riding along, and he's going to park it near where the garbage cans used to be up on the top there by the garages. And he started making faces at me, and if you can imagine him making faces, and he went right into a tree. I'm standing there, Paul!
Didn't I do anything good? It's funny here. Take your notes.
And there was Chris the next day with the collar around his whiplash from it. Everything she says is true. And then you should have seen what Paul looked like when he first came. You remember Mr. Clean? Not a hair on his head. Paul was totally shaven. And one day I was at the desk and I said, Paul, you've got some hairs. He had little bitty hairs, like baby hairs coming up. And so he had to prove to me that he had hair, and that's the result. That's the result. Then he went to a toupee and a few other things too. But has at least not gone back to the Mr. Clean. And for that, we thank Now, for Chris. Chris came as a quiet girl. Of course, Paul used to work in New York. She didn't have him home very many hours, but when she got here, she had him for lunch, she had him for dinner, she had him all evening. She really learned to be a Bible student and spent hours in prayer. And that's one of the things that we all know about Chris. I'm not sure why, but anyway, that's what she learned to do. She learned to take walks in the woods and appreciate the woods coming from the city, and she learned these things. And she's an expert planter of lily of the valleys. Mary, you'll have to ask her where they're planted at the place. And I won't even explain that one.
Green side up.
Yeah, green side up.
And Mary had many Christmas Eve dinners together when our families were small and we were lonely, and we spent Christmas Eve dinners together. Me bringing Norwegian food and she having Italian food. We had quite the dinner there.
And Karen throwing up afterwards.
So Chris, we give you Paul. We've tried, we've chipped him, we've tried to mold him and melt him and do everything so that you can endure him now for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Paul hasn't figured out by now.
We
can love you would be to roast you.
Really?
He is looking a little colorful up here. That's great.
Shirt's coming off in a minute.
Well, another loving friend of yours has had a lot to do with food service over these last few years. And so, the Raspberry Sherbet Kid.
Oh boy.
We came to know Paul when I got a telephone call. This was back in 1980. Yes, this was 84, early 84, and got a telephone call from this guy from Jersey City, and he told me who he was, and he had read my name in a Inter Cristo report that he had gotten. It said that I was interested in food service, and I listened to what he had to say, and didn't convince me that I was interested at all. I thought after I got off the phone, like, who is this guy? You know, and Paul is a very, sweet talking, lovable guy, and he was trying to sell me Keswick like a used car, and I remember it distinctly. It was Saturday morning. It was I guess it was about 9 o'clock, and he was the phone call came, and I said, well, no, I said I'm really not interested at this time. I don't think we're interested in moving to New Jersey. And the Lord had a different thing on his mind. I called Paul back then, I guess it was about 2 weeks later, after I'd already told him I wasn't interested, and told him I'd like to come up and see the place and so forth. Drove all the way up here, and Paul swears to this day that he gave me the correct directions. I'm not sure about it yet. I ended up on the other side of Fort Dix, coming up Route 295, and I went all the way up till it ended just about, and then wormed my way back. But sat with Paul and got finished and realized the Lord was in fact leading me here. The strange thing about it though was that Paul told me all about the busy summer season that was coming up and so forth. He says, but just wait, he says, until the off season. He says, the off season, there's not much going on at all. Paul, you remember the slow season, don't you?
Slow season.
Slow season.
September to June.
September to June, that was the slow season. I think about December, I was just about disheveled, and it was like, it was great because as I started on weekends, we had weekend help here, everything was fine. I started with Dot Worth, and that was when the Dot Worth weekend, we had 200 plus ladies here, indoctrinated by fire. We got through the summer, and I thought, boy, just wait till the fall, Dave, just wait till the fall. It got to be early December when I asked Paul when it was going to slow down. And he said, well, this is the off season, and it never has gotten off, and I think Robbie will tell you that the records show over the last 5 years that it's gone the other way. We've gotten heavier during the fall to heavier during the off season. As we have during the busy summer schedule. So Paul is a good salesman, and I think the Lord really used him. I know in bringing me here, and I sometimes want to hold that against him, but other times I'm very thankful, that he did it. Chris has told me that I was born Italian, even though I wasn't. And a lot of times she's told me so many stories about her mother and her bread. When we first started baking bread here several years ago, that reminded her of her baking bread at home. And I've come to love the both of them. And I'm not saying goodbye or so long because I know they're still going to be here. And I'm looking forward to seeing them around for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Another person who used to wind his way to Paul Volz's office quite regularly is sitting here handsomely in the front row. Ken Brown.
Paul knows I wouldn't say anything bad about him. But I got lost on the way here when he hired me too.
Got Roosevelt City.
I only live 3 miles away. I was thinking over a lot of funny stories, and I could probably be here all night with stories of things that Paul and I have been through, but I just picked out 2 that were kind of funny times. And one was one night Paul called me about, I guess it was 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, and he said, Ken, I don't know for sure, but I think I might have a chimney fire going. And now Paul had put a wood stove insert into his fireplace, and well, I don't know about y'all, but when I throw wood in the wood stove, I throw wood in the wood stove. But everything was measured and calculated with Paul, including having a hole cut in the floor and a fan bringing up fresh air from downstairs and blowing across the heated surface of the stove. And this was before the age of computers, but Paul had everything calculated. So when he called me and he said he had a chimney fire going, I said, Paul, from everything I've heard about, never heard of chimney fire, but from everything I've heard about, you don't think you have a chimney fire. You know you have a chimney fire. People told me that when a chimney fire happens, it sounds like you have a railroad train going through your living room. And Paul said, no, it's just kind of a little hissing and whistling sound. And I said, no, you're just imagining it. And I hung up, and I thought to myself, there was a real trepidation in Paul's voice, very recognizable. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized he's got an airtight stove here. And that roar, that railroad train sound that normally happens with a chimney fire, is because of the fireplace. It can get all the air at once. And I called him back and I said, I think I better come over. And I came over and there was this glow at the top of the chimney. And so I had some of these Chimnex fire extinguisher things that they look like a railroad flare. You just throw them in the fire, and they're supposed to eat up all the oxygen in there, and the fire goes right out. Right, Paul?
That's what the directions say.
We're tossing these things in there 2 or 3 at a time, and the only thing happened is the glow changed from red to white. And it's just this white glow then. It looked like E.T. was coming in. And Paul said, "You think we ought to call the fire department?" I said, "I don't feel kind of stupid. What can we do with this thing?" Well, you know, Paul's house almost crumbled its foundation by its multiplicity of safety features. On the wall.
Where's Westress? Have they figured out how to get in yet?
They've removed most of them.
The Westerners figured out how to get in, they can't get out. And here, now, recognizing that it's about 15 degrees outside, a very cold night, and all the garden hoses were all frozen up and everything. Paul said, "Not to worry, follow me." And he takes me down to his laundry room, and here on the wall is a reel with a garden hose, all worn, ready to hook up. So we hooked it up and took it up on the roof and set a nozzle to a fine spray and just lowered it down, and we got the fire. And that was one of our more fun nights together, wasn't it? And but there were others. Some of us would remember the night about, I guess about 1 o'clock in the morning. We had a full house. We had a Reformed Episcopal group here.
Oh.
And remember that?
Chris remembers.
Yes. And my phone rang, and the girl that was the matron at that time in Victory Hall said, "Ken, come quick. Victory Hall is on fire." And I jumped out of bed. It was pouring rain. Drove up here, and Paul was right close behind me. And no fire. And I walk inside, and I meet this girl, and I said, "But I smell smoke." When I walked in. And I said, "Where's all the people?" She said, "They're asleep." I said, "You called the fire department?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "You got to get these people out of here." Anyhow, Paul, that was one of our more fun nights too. And it was
the punchline. Yeah.
It was a ballast out of one of the fluorescent light fixtures. The ballast had melted, and
Smoke.
They got all the people out of it before, over here to
Yeah.
the building, and there was nothing really.
yeah, and those people thought it was great.
We charged them extra.
I have met people from that group that thought that was one of the highlights of their visit. But the other funny story I want to tell about Paul and Chris is when I first came here, the first couple of years I was here, Paul and Chris had a terribly, terribly bad time with their septic system.
That's the truth.
And every 2 or 3 months, I had to go down and pump that septic system out. It got to be such a chore all the time, digging up the top of the septic tanks, both of them, that I took a chimney flue and made new lids for the septic tanks with a chimney flue molded right into them that came up out of the ground and made little aluminum covers on each one. So that when we needed to pump the septic tanks, we just took this little aluminum lid off and dropped the hose down. We didn't have to do any digging. Made it a lot easier for me, but it was still embarrassing for Paul and Chris, who had to tell people when they came to visit them, "Listen, if you're not doing anything heavy in there, don't flush it."
Nick, you don't know what you're missing.
So, one day Paul came to me and he said, "Ken, you got to do something." And I said, "All right, Paul, I'll work on it." So he came back up here to work, and I found that we had 2 cracked toilet bowls up in the... I wish I had that picture with me. I had 2 cracked toilet bowls up in the bathhouses that we had to replace. So I replaced them, and I took the 2 toilet bowls out, and I put one on top of each of these little aluminum lids. And then I came up and I told Paul, I said, when you go home tonight, you'll find that the problem is completely taken care of. And that there is accommodations there for both you and for Chris. When Paul came home, he found these two toilet bowls in there. And so...
It worked fine. A little cool at times.
No more back. No more back. Yeah, he could go out there, he could carry a shotgun with him. So there's some of the funnier memories with Paul. But I have to say that I can't think of the word, but that meticulousness that had the hose reel in the laundry room, and there were times when we thanked the Lord that Paul had that shotgun to take care of some necessary problems. And I think that in many ways that caring to detail will be hard to follow. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Isn't it nice that out of the normal stream of humanity that God sent us someone who is creative? Robbie Richardson wants to say something at this time.
I haven't been here that long, but I've known Paul for about 8 or 10 years. I got married here at Keswick and kind of married into the family. Since I've been here, I've been able to work closely with Paul, and I really appreciate that. The one story that I'll never forget happened with my kids, and Jenny and Amy, and one of Paul's snakes. Actually, it wasn't one of Paul's snakes, but we had a snake in the front yard, and we called Paul. Paul used to love that. And so I took Jenny and Amy out. They were a lot younger, and I had one in each arm, and we were following this snake around to watch it for Uncle Paul, because we didn't know what it was, and he came running down. And so I have Jenny and Amy here. Amy's wanting to reach down and grab the snake. Jenny's trying to go the other direction. Paul says, "Oh, it's a king snake. Don't worry." He said, "King snakes don't bite." He said, "Watch this, girls." And he picks this snake up, and as soon as he picked it up, this snake bit it. Paul looked at it and shook it off, and it bit again. And Amy hadn't believed Paul since. Paul said, "These snakes don't bite." That snake got But I will say that having been here for a little bit under 2 years, and having worked very closely with Paul with the guest group area, to go back to something Ken said before, we can have a lot of fun laughing with the snakes and with other things, but I don't know of anybody who has been more organized and who could have been better for me. Mark, I know you would echo the same things as far as learning. Paul, in his 20 years, not only did a lot for Keswick, but he made sure that what he did was documented, and the things that he turned over very well. I hesitate greatly if I'm here for that long. When I turn something over, it's not going to be in nearly the same shape. But we appreciate you. We love you.
Thanks, Robbie. I don't want to cut anyone off tonight who wants to share, but we do want to make sure that we allow adequate time for TNT. But are there some others tonight who just want to make a comment or two?
No. Keep it short. Keep it short.
We've known Paul and Chris for over 10 years, 10 and a half years, I guess it is right now. And you're talking about those toilet bowls out there in the field. Well, they had, after a while they put houses around them, built and if you don't see them there, it's because they had a fire, which reminds me of the fellow who said, I understand it, to another man, he said, "I understand that you had a fire in your bathroom." And the fellow said, "Yes, we did." The other fellow said, "You had reached the house." But
Warren understands that one.
I'm going to be a little more serious about this, because something is very, very serious about us, and we don't want to embarrass Paul or Chris. But we came on the Keswick property, I said 10 and a half years ago, more than 10 and a half years ago now. And he came to me after we were in the trailer park for about a month or so. We had paid our first week's rental to park our trailer. And so he came to me one day and very, very sort of hesitantly and said, would it be too demeaning for a minister to become a night watchman? And I said no. And so we became the night watchman. Now, there was no night watchman before we came along. There's not been any since.
We did away with night, Bill.
Well, no, Dave is still here. Sorry about that. But in the course of those nights of night watching, we had some interesting experiences along the way. But Margie and I always feel that this was God's provision through Paul, creating a job. There were many people that said, boy, they were glad to see a night watchman around here, but the Lord's been taking care of the place. But I just want to say that to Paul and to Chris for his sensitiveness. I thought that was sensitivity on our behalf, one of God's servants, his wife, and to create a position for us so that we can be taken care of in the course of time. And he didn't know that, and I didn't know that, but I guess it was the Lord's way of getting us into the type of ministry where I started as a kid from New York City. I guess Paul and I seem to get along pretty well. We've had our little tete-a-tetes once in a while, but that's only natural. But he's a Jerseyite, Jersey Cityite. That makes a difference from any place else in Jersey. And I'm from New York, so he lived in New York too. So we have a unique relationship. But I appreciate it, Paul. We've told him this before, but I wanted you folks to know what this man has meant to the Blackleys, what he meant to Keswick, too, in many ways. And again, to re-echo what you just said a moment ago, the meticulous thing of taking care of the insurances and all this, the telephone system, Mark, you've got your work cut out for you, but God is able to do the same thing through you. So we say thank you, Paul, in a very serious vein, even though we've had some other fun along the way. And he likes and he will be as I do with him.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else who just wants to speak tonight? Warren and Benji?
I just thought of one little story that happened. A couple months ago, we had one day had to get together with Paul and Chris, me and Phil and a couple of the kids, and had to go down and meet and talk to them about something. And about the time we were ready to go over there, they were just going out the door, and so we couldn't go over. And so I said, well, I'll go around and do my stuff, and then later on when you get back, they said, we're going to run uptown, we'll be home. So when they finally got home, they gave us a call and said, we're home now. You can come over whenever you want. And I said, well, now I got to finish this little job and finish that little job, and I got to go home and get Phil and get the kids, and I don't know where they're all at. And so it might be 5 minutes, it might be 20 minutes, but I don't know how long it will be till we get there. He said, that's okay, we'll keep our clothes on.
Following has been deleted.
Edited for television.
For every time Paul's quoted one of those, we've had a few good yucks in administrative meetings. Oh my. Anyone else who just wants to share something tonight? Scott.
2 years ago when we went to Florida and I got sick, I learned to appreciate Paul more than I ever had, especially when we came home. The bills had amounted to something over $100,000. Paul took care of every paper, never complained, was always willing. I remember one time I got a bill from the hospital for $900, and I thought, oh man. I called Paul. Paul said, send him $50. I thought, oh boy, this is going to work out. At the end, they sent back the $50 and said it was a mistake that they had made. I have nothing but appreciation and love for Paul and Chris.
Thanks, John. Anyone else who wants to share tonight? I mean, I know there are lots of you who would like to, but if I keep moving, I'm not gonna hurt anyone's. All right, we have a and this is not a suggestion. I'm not trying to in any way visualize your future, but we do have a little bit of a last will and testament that we'd like to bequeath by Paul and Chris. Bill?
Before reading the official document, I do want to say that in a serious vein, that Chris has been one of our real prayer warriors, and we appreciate so much her ministry at the bookstore and the fact that she's had some excellent opportunities of witnessing to people that came into the bookstore and helping them through her suggestions of things to read. So we don't want to leave you behind in our roast of Paul. we can't think of things to roast you for.
I just belong to him, that's enough.
Most people have have heard of living wills in terms of removing any life support systems and things of that sort. You know, when you're in your final days. This is not that kind of a living will. This is a will for a living person. But I think that this is very gracious of Paul to make all these requests to us. And if your name has been omitted, why, it's just that I didn't have enough time to put everybody in. There's something here for a good many of us. I, Paul C. Volz, presently residing in Whiting, County of Ocean, State of New Jersey, being of questionable and indisposing mind, weak memory, and limited understanding, hereby make, publish, and declare the following to be my last Keswick will and testament, revoking all previous wills made by me at any time. First, I contribute all my accumulated days and vacations to our newest staff member, Jim Shorter, until he attains enough seniority to accumulate his own. Second, I make the following gifts and bequests. Number 1, to Nick Westra, I bequeath my front window view of the dump. 2, to Dave Knight, I bequeath my garlic concession. Number 3, to Grace Bibick, I bequeath my formula for eating speed so that she can come to meals later and leave earlier than anyone else. 4th, to Ruth J. Rawes, I give a tape recording of my earlier habit of grinding my teeth, complete with her ear-piercing scream. 5th, to Jay Hibbard, I bequeath the logo of the Pines and Swan used on our ads and bumper stickers. 6th, to Ken Brown, I bequeath my equipment for dispatching unauthorized fishermen, consisting of 1 submachine gun, 1 grenade launcher, 1 bullhorn, 1 whistle. Oh, I forgot, 1 Polaroid camera for license plate recording. To Mark Colchin, I bequeath my pants with oversized pockets for carrying portable telephones. Also, I turn over to him my reinforced belt so that he can carry all of the keys without danger of an embarrassing break. You caught me at a bad time, right?
I'm all emotional.
To Pastor Bill, I bequeath the remaining elements of my hairpiece concession.
You'll need it.
Yes. Complete with my before and after photos for his business card. 9th, to Eric Richardson, I bequeath my toad concession and agreed to underwrite the bounty paid by 25 cents per toad. 10, to Bill Blackley, I bequeath my business card entitling him to a spot in the Willow Valley hot tub at considerable savings. 11, to Robbie Richardson and Jay Hibbard, I bequeath my special phone amplifier to aid them in dealing with groups who come from foreign language backgrounds.
Just shout loud, Robbie. Shout loud.
12, to Roger Williams, I bequeath my cryptic code for writing short messages so that through the use of these abbreviations he will be able to shorten conversations and written documents and get to meals on time. 13. To Robbie Richardson, I bequeath my ability at sign language so that he can prompt Roger up on the platform in the auditorium. In witness hereof, I hereto set my hand and seal this 5th day of January, 1989, Paul C. Volz.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
And thank you, Pastor Bill, for your creativity. We have 2 hymns tonight that we'd like to sing, and just one more serious item before we're concluded. Number 77 in your hymn book is one of Chris Volz's favorite hymns, Amazing Grace, How Sweet the Sound. And Molly Shorter, thank you for being on keyboard tonight for us. Let's sing. This is a short one. We'll sing all 4 stanzas of this, okay? I'm not going to take long because I have the privilege of the official presentation tonight, but just a quick note. There are many things I could talk about Paul. One was culture shock the first time I heard him make a phone call. I came from the Midwest where you normally talk to people, hello, ma'am, sir. He was calling them honey and sweetie and all this kind of stuff on the phone. I'm not sure he even knew who he was talking to, but anyway, it was interesting learning Jersey City jargon on the phone line. But the thing I could say a lot of good things too about Paul, but I just want to say to Chris tonight, thank you for a godly spirit. I think ever since I've come to Keswick, the one thing that just your presence has meant, let alone your work, your wonderful work in bookstore, your godly spirit. Thank you for having an intimate walk with Christ that just shows, and it comes out in your speech and your actions, and has been a tremendous encouragement to me personally, and been a wonderful blessing to all of us here at Keswick. So thank you for that. The verses I picked, I had my, because I was going to be efficient, and then I took my thing out to show Robbie my program here, but I found them. Here they are. Colossians 3, 23 and 24. Whatever you do, do your work heartily, as for the Lord rather than for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance. It is the Lord Christ whom you serve. I have talked with Paul. I've even shared with Paul and Chris at lunch that one day. And the thing that came out was that was their spirit here. They were very conscious of the fact that they were serving the Lord Christ. And thank you for doing your work heartily over many, many, many years. 20 years means a lot. And we are very, very, very good organization. And just as a very tiny way of saying thank you, we have, first of all, a card. A lot of us had the privilege of signing. You can look at that in a little bit. But Paul and Chris, why don't you stand up here for a second? And
Gold watch.
This is stage 1. There's another thing coming, but this is stage 1. This is a plaque that says, presented to Paul and Chris Volz in sincere love and appreciation for 20 years of faithful and responsible service to our Lord Jesus Christ at America's Keswick. I thank my God upon every remembrance of you, Philippians 1:3, presented upon their retirement, December 31, 1988, America's Keswick, Whiting, New Jersey. I'd like you to have this as just one way of remembering us and remembering all those years. I'm going to kiss your forehead.
There's so much space to kiss. We have a dirt spot on the wall that will just cover it.
And what we want to tell you is that the board has commissioned Judy Dickinson to paint you an original oil painting, and that'll be coming to you just as soon as Judy is able to finish that.
Do you know that's one of the deepest things in my heart? I wanted a picture of Keswick in my house, and I know just where I'm going to put it.
Oh, great. Praise the Lord. So anyway, we say thank you for wonderful, wonderful years.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
most of the nice things that were said. Good or bad, I mean, that's us. We just thank the Lord for the opportunity we've had here of serving and being part of all your lives in one way or another. And we are going to miss you, except that we're not going to be too far away, and we probably will get back and forth once in a while.
I hope a lot.
Don't cry, Kathy.
Got your number right.
What's your address?
Number 3.
I'm not giving my address or phone number right. But you're all invited.
You're all invited, but you don't know where they are.
I know what it is.
It's easy, they're in Crestwood.
That's right.
31A Yorktown Road.
Pick 'em out. Pick 'em out.
Number 362. We'll close with this tonight. This is Paul's favorite hymn. Out of the Ivory Palaces. Paul, you want to take 2 stanzas?
Anyone, John?
Any ones I want, all right? How about 1 and 4?
Okay.
Number 362. Why don't you stand with me and we'll sing this as our conclusion tonight. My Lord has done it so wondrous fine, and worth and texture filled. His fragrance breathes with his heart of mine, with joy my being filled. Out the ivory palaces into a world of glory. Only His great eternal love made my Savior in garments glorious He will come to open wide the door, and I shall enter my heavenly home to dwell forevermore. Out of the ivory palaces into a world of only His great eternal love made my Savior Pastor Bill is going to close us tonight with a word of prayer.
Our Father, as we have spent this evening together in a time of joy and rejoicing in your faithfulness, a time of fun and laughter, there has been beneath it all a very serious note of thanksgiving to you for the importance of lives that you brought across our paths. And we thank you for this. We thank you for Paul and Chris, and we commit them to you for the continued working of your Spirit through them and in them to your glory and praise. We pray that this evening will be remembered as one of enjoyment and fellowship and one of fun, one in which you have proven yourself to be faithful in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming.